At the restaurant, my son snapped at me and said, "Dad, this table is for family. You need to wait outside." The whole room laughed. Then the waiter placed a $5,000 bill in front of me. I looked at it in silence. I looked at my son, and I pushed it back. What happened next didn't just ruin his birthday party. It destroyed the fake life he had built on my back. If you have ever been underestimated by the very people you sacrificed everything for, then hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments which city you are watching from. It comforts me to know that I am not alone in this world. My name is Paul Harrison. I am 70 years old. I was once a chief engineer responsible for building bridges that thousands of people cross every day. But tonight, inside the glowing dining room of Oriole in Chicago, I was just an obstacle. The restaurant hummed with the sound of crystal glasses clinking and expensive laughter. It was a Michelin star establishment, the kind of place where the lighting is dim and the menu has no prices. I was sitting alone at a tiny service table near the kitchen doors. Every time a waiter rushed past, the breeze would flap the lapel of my suit. It was a good suit. Charcoal gray, wool. But it was 10 years old. It was the suit I wore to bury my wife Sarah 3 months ago. At the center of the room sat the reason we were here, my son Ryan. It was his 40th birthday. He looked magnificent in a tailored navy blazer holding court at a long table covered in white linen. Beside him was his wife Megan. She was throwing her head back, laughing at something a business partner said. The chandelier light caught the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist. It sparkled violently. I stared at that bracelet. I knew exactly how much it cost, because 3 weeks ago they used my credit card to buy it. I sat there quietly, clutching a glass of tap water. I had not been served any food. Ryan had told me earlier that the tasting menu was too complex for my stomach. He said, "Dad, you just stick to the bread. You do not want to get sick in front of my investors." So I ate the bread. I watched them eat Osetra caviar and Wagyu beef. I watched Ryan pour a bottle of 1996 Chateau Margaux for a man I had never met. That bottle cost more than my first car. Suddenly, the laughter at the main table died down. Ryan stood up. He adjusted his silk tie and looked over at me. For a second, I thought he was going to invite me over. I thought maybe he remembered that without me, he would not be sitting in that chair. I thought maybe he remembered that I was his father. He walked toward me. He did not smile. His face was tight with annoyance. When he reached my tiny table, he did not lower his voice. "Dad, look at you," he said. "You are slouching. You are making the guests uncomfortable." I straightened my back. "I am just sitting here, Ryan," I said. "I am waiting for the cake." Ryan rolled his eyes. He sighed loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear. "This is a business dinner, Dad. This table is for family and important partners. You sitting here in that old suit looking like a lost puppy is killing the vibe. We are trying to close a deal here." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I looked past him at Megan. She was busy checking her reflection in a spoon, ignoring me completely. "So what do you want me to do, Ryan?" I asked, my voice steady. "I want you to go wait in the bar area," he said, pointing toward the entrance. "Just go sit on one of those stools and wait until we are done. I will have the waiter bring you a soda. Please just do not embarrass me anymore tonight." The conversation at the table nearest to us had stopped. A young couple was watching. The woman covered her mouth to hide a giggle. They thought I was just a senile old man being managed by his successful son. They saw a burden. They did not see the man who paid for Ryan's college. They did not see the man who sold his home to fund Ryan's startup. I looked into my son's eyes. They were cold. There was no love there. Only calculation. "Very well, Ryan," I said. I stood up slowly. My knees popped. I brushed the breadcrumbs off my trousers. "I hope you have a wonderful evening." Good, Ryan said, turning his back on me before I had even finished the sentence. Just stay out of sight. I walked through the dining room. It felt like walking through a tunnel of judgment. I could feel eyes on my back. I could hear the whispers. Poor old guy. He looks confused. I kept my head high. I did not look at the floor. I walked straight to the bar area, which was separated from the dining room by a glass partition. The bartender was a young man with kind eyes. He looked at me with pity. "Can I get you anything, sir?" he asked. "Maybe a menu." "No, thank you, son," I said. "Just a water. Ice. No lemon." I sat on the high leather stool. From this vantage point, I had a perfect view of the entire restaurant. I was no longer a guest. I was a spectator. I was a sniper in the bell tower. I watched Ryan return to his seat. He made a joke and the table erupted in laughter again. He clapped the business partner on the shoulder. He looked relieved that I was gone. He thought he had solved the problem. He thought he had put the old man in the corner where he belonged. He had no idea. I took a sip of the ice water. It was cold and sharp. It helped clarify my mind. For the last 3 months, I had been living in a fog of grief since Sarah died. I had let them move me to Chicago. I had let them take control of my finances. I had let them treat me like a child because I was too heartbroken to fight. I had trusted them because they were my blood. But blood is not enough. I watched Megan hold up her wineglass for a toast. I saw the way she looked at Ryan with greedy adoration. Not love for him, but love for the lifestyle he provided. A lifestyle funded by the $18 million I had foolishly entrusted to them. They thought I was senile. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was just sitting at the bar staring at nothing. But I was counting. I counted the bottles of wine. 4. I counted the appetizers. 6. I counted the main courses. I did the math in my head. I was an engineer after all. Numbers were my language. I calculated the tax and the tip. I knew exactly what was coming. Ryan waved at the waiter. He made a grand gesture, signing the air for the check. He was drunk on power, drunk on expensive wine, drunk on the illusion that he was the king of the world. I reached into the inner pocket of my old gray suit. My fingers brushed against the cold metal of my Mont Blanc fountain pen. It was a gift from Sarah for my retirement. She had engraved my initials on it. It was the only thing of value I had left that they had not taken. I watched the waiter walk toward the main table with the black leather folder. The bill. Ryan laughed at something the investor said. He did not even look up. He just waved his hand dismissively and pointed a finger. He pointed directly at me. I saw his lips move. I could not hear the words through the glass, but I knew exactly what he said. "Give it to my dad. He handles the bills." The waiter looked confused. He looked at Ryan, then he looked at me, sitting alone in the shadows of the bar. He hesitated. Ryan shooed him away aggressively. "Go on," Ryan mouthed. "Take it to him." I sat up straighter on the stool. I uncapped my pen. The gold nib caught the dim light. "Bring it here," I whispered to myself. I was not angry anymore. The anger had burned out hours ago, leaving something much harder and much colder in its place. I was ready. The waiter walked toward me. He looked apologetic. He looked like he expected me to crumble. He expected the old man to panic over the price. He expected me to be the victim. But tonight was not about being a victim. Tonight was about a lesson. Ryan wanted me to pay. He wanted me to be the silent bank account that fueled his ego. He wanted me to be invisible until it was time to sign the check. Well, I was going to sign something, all right. But it was not going to be a check. As the waiter placed the leather folder on the bar counter in front of me, I took a slow, deep breath. I looked at the reflection of my son in the mirror behind the bar. He was toasting again, oblivious to the cliff he was about to drive off. "Happy birthday, Ryan," I thought. "I hope you enjoyed the meal, because it is the last one you will ever eat at my expense." I opened the folder. The number at the bottom was $5,118.74. I picked up my pen. I looked down at the paper in front of me. The total amount was staring back at me in bold black ink. $5,118. It was an obscene amount of money for a single meal. It was more than my father made in a year when I was growing up. It was enough to feed a family for months. But to my son Ryan and his wife Megan, it was just another Friday night. It was just another expense that they expected me to absorb without question. I felt the weight of the Mont Blanc pen shine in my hand. The gold nib hovered over the signature line. For a moment I remembered the day Sarah gave me this pen. It was the day I retired. She told me to use it to write the next chapter of our lives together. She never imagined that I would be using it in a dimly lit bar to cut off our only son. I did not sign my name. Instead, I moved the pen to the blank space above the total. I wrote slowly and clearly. My handwriting was steady. I wanted him to be able to read every single letter. "Happy birthday, Ryan. From today, you pay." I capped the pen. The click sounded loud in the quiet bar. I closed the leather folder and pushed it across the polished wood toward the waiter. He was watching me with a mix of confusion and fear. He knew something was wrong, but he was too polite to ask. "Please take this back to the gentleman at the main table," I said softly. "Tell him the matter has been settled." The waiter nodded and walked away. I watched him navigate through the tables. My heart was beating a little faster now, but not from nervousness. It was the adrenaline of finally taking a stand. I took a sip of water and waited. At the main table, the mood was still celebratory. Ryan was pouring more wine. Megan was laughing her head off at a joke I could not hear. They looked like royalty. They looked untouchable. When the waiter arrived, Ryan did not even look at him. He just held out his hand expecting the receipt. He expected to see my signature. He expected to see that everything had been taken care of as usual. He opened the folder. He glanced at it casually at first. Then he stopped. His smile froze. He blinked and leaned in closer as if he could not believe what his eyes were seeing. He read the note once. Then he read it again. I saw his face change. The color rose from his neck to his cheeks. It was not embarrassment. It was pure rage. He snapped his head around and looked directly at me. His eyes were wide with disbelief. He stood up abruptly, knocking his napkin onto the floor. "What is this?" he shouted. The entire restaurant went quiet. The music seemed to stop. The diners at the nearby tables put down their forks. Ryan did not care. He was too arrogant to care about public scenes. He waved the bill in the air. "My father is confused," he announced to his table. His voice was loud and condescending. "He is having one of his episodes. I apologize, everyone. He forgot how to sign a check." He laughed, but it was a nervous, hollow sound. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. He extracted a card. It was black, heavy, metal. The American Express Centurion card. It was the ultimate status symbol. It was the card that opened every door. And it was a supplementary card linked directly to my primary investment account. He handed it to the waiter with a sneer. "Just run this," he said, "and bring me a receipt. We are done here." The waiter took the card and hurried away toward the payment terminal near the bar. I sat perfectly still. I watched the waiter swipe the card. I watched him wait. I counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. The machine beeped. A red light flashed. The waiter frowned. He took the card out and wiped the chip on his apron. He tried again. He inserted the card and waited. Beep, I took another sip of water. The water tasted sweet. The waiter looked panic-stricken. He walked back to the main table. He leaned down and whispered something to Ryan. Ryan looked as if he had been slapped. "Declined," he said loudly. "That is impossible. Do you know who I am? Do you know how much money is on that card?" "Run it again." "I already did, sir," the waiter said, his voice trembling. "It says refer to issuer. The account has been frozen." Ryan laughed again, but this time there was sweat on his forehead. "This is ridiculous. The bank probably flagged it because of the large amount." "Stupid security algorithms. Here." He pulled out another card. "A Visa Infinite, also linked to my account. Try this one," he said, "and be quick about it." The waiter took the card. He walked back to the machine. The room was so quiet that I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Everyone was watching now. The investors at Ryan's table were exchanging uncomfortable glances. They were starting to realize that the successful businessman they were dining with might not be who he claimed to be. The waiter returned. He did not have to speak. His face said it all. "Declined." Ryan stood up. He was shaking. He looked at Megan. "Give me your card," he snapped. Megan looked terrified. She dug into her designer clutch and pulled out her platinum card, the one she used for her spa days and her shopping sprees, the one I paid for. The waiter took it. He did not even walk away this time. He used the handheld terminal at the table. He inserted the card. We all waited. The silence stretched out. It was heavy and suffocating. Beep. Transaction declined. Megan gasped. She looked at her phone. She opened her banking app. I saw her tapping furiously. Then she looked up at Ryan, her face pale. "Ryan," she whispered, "the accounts. They are gone. It says 0. It says access denied." The business partners began to stand up. One of them cleared his throat. "Ryan, looks like you have some family matters to sort out," the man said. "We are going to head out. We can discuss the partnership another time." "No, wait, please," Ryan stammered. "It is just a technical glitch. My father, he messed something up." But they were already leaving. They were walking away from the table, leaving the half-eaten food and the open bottles of wine. They were walking away from the deal Ryan had spent months cultivating. Ryan stood alone in the wreckage of his party. The waiter was still standing there holding the bill. "Sir, how would you like to settle this?" the waiter asked. Ryan did not answer. He turned slowly toward the bar. He turned toward me. The look on his face was no longer just angry. It was dangerous. He looked like a cornered animal. He realized that I had done this. He realized that the old man in the corner had just pulled the rug out from under his entire life. He started walking toward me. He was moving fast. His hands were clenched into fists. His face was twisted into a mask of hatred. "Dad!" he screamed. "What did you do?" He was coming for me. He was going to yell. He might even try to hit me. But as he rushed across the room, I did not feel fear. I felt a strange sense of detachment. I watched him come closer, and suddenly the restaurant faded away. The angry man in the navy suit faded away. In my mind, I traveled back to before the anger, back to before the betrayal, back to the moment when I made the mistake of trusting him with everything I had. I closed my eyes and let the memory take me. It started 3 months ago in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers. It started with the worst day of my life. 3 months ago, the world stopped turning. It did not end with an explosion or a grand catastrophe. It ended with the quiet, steady beep of a heart monitor flatlining in a private room at Massachusetts General Hospital. Sarah was gone. My wife of 45 years. My anchor. My best friend. The silence that followed that machine was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I held her hand for a long time, waiting for it to squeeze back, but it just grew colder. In that moment, I felt something inside me break. It was not a bone or a muscle. It was my will to fight. I was 70 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was completely and utterly alone. I was sitting in the hallway staring at the linoleum floor when I heard the click of expensive dress shoes. It was Ryan. He and Megan had flown in from Chicago. They rushed toward me with open arms. Ryan hugged me tight. He smelled of sandalwood cologne and airport coffee. Megan was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Oh, Dad," she sobbed. "We are so sorry. We got here as fast as we could." I let them hold me. I was a drowning man, and they felt like a life raft. I did not notice that Ryan checked his watch over my shoulder. I did not notice that Megan's tears stopped the moment a nurse walked by. I only saw my son and his wife offering me the comfort I was desperate for. I thought they were there to grieve with me. I did not know they were vultures circling a fresh carcass, waiting for the right moment to pick the bones clean. The days after the funeral were a blur of gray skies and black suits. We went back to the house in Boston. The house Sarah and I had bought 30 years ago. It was a beautiful colonial place with a wraparound porch and a garden where Sarah used to grow hydrangeas. But without her, it did not feel like a home anymore. It felt like a museum of memories. Every corner held a ghost. The kitchen where she made Sunday pancakes. The living room where we watched movies on rainy nights. The silence in the house was suffocating. I would sit in my armchair in the dark, just listening to the grandfather clock tick. This was when the campaign began. It was subtle at first. Ryan would sit across from me at the dinner table, pushing food around his plate. "Dad," he would say softly, "you cannot stay here alone. Look at this place. It is too big for one person. It is full of stairs. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one is here to help you?" Megan would chime in, pouring me another cup of tea. She was always pouring tea, always smiling, that sad, sympathetic smile. "We worry about you so much, Paul," she would say. "We cannot sleep at night thinking of you all alone in this big, empty house. It is not healthy. You need family. You need to be taken care of." They chipped away at my resistance day by day. They used my grief as a weapon. They told me that Sarah would want me to be happy. They told me that moving on was what she would have wanted. They planted the seed that I was frail, that I was old, that I was incapable of managing my own life. Then came the solution. The beautiful, perfect solution. "Come to Chicago," Ryan said one evening. "We have the penthouse in Lincoln Park. It is huge. There is plenty of space. You can have your own wing. We will cook for you. We will take you to your appointments. You can watch your grandchildren grow up if we have them. You will never be lonely again." It sounded like paradise. It sounded like salvation. I was so tired of the silence. I was so tired of missing Sarah. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to be a father again. I wanted to be needed. So I agreed. The next day, the paperwork appeared. It was like magic. Ryan had everything ready. He had a real estate agent lined up to sell the Boston house. He had movers on speed dial. And then he brought out the thick leather binder. "This is for your protection, Dad," he said, sliding the documents across the mahogany table. "It is called the Harrison Family Trust." He opened the binder and started explaining. He used big words: asset protection, tax efficiency, estate planning. He sounded so smart, so professional. He told me that by pooling our resources, we could build a dynasty. He told me that if I put the proceeds from the house sale and my retirement savings into this trust, he could manage it for me. "You have worked hard your whole life, Dad," he said, looking me in the eye. "You built bridges. You saved money. Now it is time for you to rest. Let me carry the load. Let me handle the bills and the taxes and the investments. You just enjoy your life. You trust me, do you not? That was the question that sealed my fate. Do you trust me? I looked at my son. I saw the little boy I used to teach how to ride a bike. I saw the young man I sent off to college. I did not see the predator. I did not see the greed. Of course I trust you, Ryan, I said. I picked up the pen. I signed the deed to the house. I sold the home where I raised my children for $3 million. Then I signed the transfer orders for my investment accounts. $15 million. Money I had saved over 40 years of working as a chief engineer. Money from patents. Money from wise stock choices. I signed it all over to the Harrison Family Trust. I thought I was securing my future. I thought I was protecting my legacy. Ryan smiled as he collected the papers. It was a wide, bright smile. I thought it was a smile of relief. I thought he was happy that his father was going to be safe. I did not know it was the smile of a man who had just pulled off the heist of the century. Megan clapped her hands. "Oh, this is going to be wonderful," she squealed. "We are going to have the best life together." Within a week, the house was sold. The furniture was packed or donated. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. I said goodbye to the ghosts. I got into the car with Ryan and Megan, and we drove to the airport. I left my entire life behind in Boston. I carried only 2 suitcases and a heart full of hope. I did not know that I was walking into a trap. I did not know that the penthouse in Chicago was not a home but a prison. I did not know that the trust fund was not a safety net, but a slush fund for their lavish lifestyle. I was blinded by grief and love, and that is exactly what they counted on. We landed in Chicago on a rainy Tuesday. The city looked gray and sharp. As we drove toward the skyline, Ryan was on his phone talking about buying a new Porsche. Megan was looking at vacation packages to the Maldives. They seemed energized, electric. I sat in the back seat watching the rain streak against the window. I felt a small knot of anxiety in my stomach. Just a tiny flutter. I pushed it down. I told myself it was just the nerves of moving. I told myself everything was going to be all right. But as the car pulled up to the gleaming glass tower that was to be my new home, I had no idea that I had just signed my own death warrant. I had no idea that the man driving the car was not my savior, but my executioner. And I certainly had no idea that the suite they had prepared for me was not a guest wing, but a windowless closet behind the kitchen. The nightmare was about to begin. The elevator doors slid open directly into the penthouse, and for a moment I was breathless. The entire city of Chicago lay spread out before us through floor-to-ceiling glass walls. The lights of the skyscrapers twinkled like diamonds in the rain. The floors were white marble that shone under the recessed lighting. There was a grand piano in the corner, and modern art on the walls that looked like it cost more than my first house. "Welcome home, Dad," Ryan said, spreading his arms wide. I stepped onto the marble, clutching my 2 suitcases. I felt small in this vast, expensive space. It was cold. Beautiful, but cold. Like a museum where you are afraid to touch anything. Megan kicked off her heels and walked to the kitchen island, which was made of a single slab of black granite. She poured herself a glass of sparkling water. "Put your bags down, Paul," she said without looking at me. "We will show you your room." I felt a surge of excitement. I remembered what Ryan had promised me. A private wing. A space where I could set up my drafting table and maybe start painting again. A place where I could have some dignity. "Lead the way," I said, smiling. Ryan nodded. He walked past the living room, past the long hallway that led to the master bedroom and the guest suites. I followed him, my suitcase wheels clicking softly on the stone. But he did not stop at the large oak doors that lined the hallway. He kept walking. He walked right past the beautiful rooms with the lake views. He walked into the kitchen. I stopped, confused. "Ryan, where are we going?" Just through here, Dad, he said. He walked to the far end of the kitchen near the pantry. There was a narrow, plain white door that looked like a utility closet. It was tucked away in the corner, invisible unless you were looking for it. Ryan opened the door. Here we are, he said. Your private sanctuary. I stared into the room. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was tiny, barely wide enough for a single bed and a small dresser. There were no windows, no view of the city, no natural light, just 4 white walls and a harsh fluorescent strip light on the ceiling. The air smelled stale like old cleaning products. It was not a guest suite. It was the maid's quarters. A room designed for service staff to sleep in between shifts, not for a father to live out his final years. I looked at Ryan. I thought it was a joke. I waited for him to laugh and say he was kidding and lead me to the real room. But he was not laughing. He was watching me with a blank expression. It is cozy, isn't it? Megan said, coming up behind me. And it is right next to the kitchen, so you can grab a snack whenever you want without waking us up. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. Ryan, you said there would be space. There are no windows in here. Ryan sighed the same impatient sigh I would hear 1,000 times over the next 3 months. Dad, look at real estate prices in Chicago. Space is a premium. This is a multi-million-dollar apartment. You have a roof over your head. You have a comfortable bed. Do not be ungrateful. Ungrateful. The word stung like a slap. I had just given him $18 million. I had just given him my entire life savings. And he was calling me ungrateful for questioning a windowless box. I walked into the room. I sat on the narrow bed. The mattress was thin and hard. I put my suitcase on the floor because there was nowhere else to put it. The door clicked shut, leaving me in the silence of my new reality. That first night, I did not sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator through the wall, wondering how I had let this happen. The next morning, the true nature of my new life began to reveal itself. I walked out into the kitchen, hoping to make some coffee. Megan was already there, eating an avocado toast. She looked at me up and down. I was wearing my bathrobe. Paul, we have a rule, she said. No sleepwear in the common areas. We have guests coming over later. Please get dressed. I apologized and went back to my room to change. When I came back out, dressed in slacks and a shirt, Ryan was sitting at the island. He had his hand out. Dad, we need to talk about logistics, he said. Logistics? I asked. Yes. Now that you are living here, we need to make sure your assets are safe. You know how forgetful you have been getting lately. I frowned. I am not forgetful, Ryan. I am grieving. There is a difference. Ryan shook his head with a pitying smile. See, that is exactly what I mean. You are confused. You left your reading glasses at the restaurant last week. You forgot to cancel the newspaper subscription in Boston. It starts with small things, Dad. We just want to protect you. He kept his hand extended. Give me your wallet and your phone. I stepped back. Why? Because you are going to lose them, Ryan said, his voice hardening. Or worse, someone is going to scam you. There are people out there who prey on the elderly dad. They will call you and trick you into giving them your credit card numbers. As the trustee of the estate, it is my legal duty to secure your finances. I looked at Megan. She was nodding in agreement. It is for your own good, Paul. You do not need money anyway. We pay for everything. Food, rent, utilities. What do you need a wallet for? I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. It was a trap, I knew it then. But I was trapped in their house in a city where I knew no one. If I refused, what would happen? Would they kick me out? Reluctantly, I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my leather wallet. The wallet Sarah gave me on our 20th anniversary. I pulled out my iPhone. Ryan took them. He did not say thank you. He just slid them into his briefcase. "Don't worry, Dad," he said. "If you need to make a call, just ask us. If you need money, just ask." We are a family. But we were not a family. I was a prisoner. The transition from father to servant happened so slowly, I almost didn't notice it until it was too late. It started with small requests. "Dad, while you are in the kitchen, can you rinse those dishes? Dad, the cleaning lady is sick today. Can you just run the vacuum over the living room rug? Dad, can you take the trash down the chute?" Within 2 weeks, the requests became orders. I was on my knees scrubbing a stain out of the white marble floor one Tuesday afternoon when it hit me. Megan was sitting on the sofa watching a reality show on TV. She lifted her feet so I could scrub underneath them without even looking at me. "You missed a spot there, Paul," she said, pointing with her manicured toe. I looked at my hands. They were wrinkled and wet with soapy water. These were the hands that had designed suspension bridges. These were the hands that had held my wife as she took her last breath. And now they were scrubbing the floor for a woman who had never worked a day in her life. I stood up. My knees ached. "Megan," I said quietly, "I am tired. I am going to rest." She paused the TV. She looked at me with genuine annoyance. "Rest," she scoffed. "From what exactly? You do not have a job, Paul. You do not pay rent. We let you live here for free. The least you can do is help out around the house. It is called contributing." I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell that I had contributed $3 million from the house sale. I wanted to yell that every piece of furniture she was sitting on was bought with my money. But I bit my tongue. I knew that without my phone, without my wallet, and without access to my accounts, I was powerless. If I made a scene, they could throw me out on the street. So I went back to my room. My windowless box, I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. That night, Ryan came home late. He was in a good mood. He had bought a new watch, a Patek Philippe. I saw the box on the counter. "Hey, Dad," he called out. "Make yourself useful and pour me a drink." Well, I walked out and poured him a scotch. He took it without looking at me. He continued talking to Megan about their upcoming trip to Dubai. "We are going to fly first class," he said. "The Emirates suite. It is going to be insane." "And what about Paul?" Megan asked, lowering her voice, but not enough. Ryan waved his hand. "Oh, don't worry. I have a plan for him. We will figure it out before we leave." A plan. The word sent a shiver down my spine. I went back to my room and lay in the dark. My gut was screaming at me. This was not just about money anymore. This was about survival. They had taken my home. They had taken my dignity. They had taken my freedom. And now they were planning something else. I looked at the closed door. I realized then that the lock was on the outside. They hadn't locked it yet, but the mechanism was there. I was not a guest. I was an inmate. And if I didn't do something soon, I was going to die in this room or somewhere even worse. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since Sarah died, I prayed. Not for peace, not for comfort. I prayed for a way out. The days bled into weeks, and the view of Lake Michigan from the floor-to-ceiling windows became a taunt. I could see the cars moving freely on Lakeshore Drive. I could see people walking their dogs and jogging along the path. But I was stuck behind the glass like a specimen in a jar. My world had shrunk to the size of the penthouse. My daily routine was dictated by the whims of my son and his wife. The isolation was surgical. It was not just that they had taken my phone and wallet. It was that they had severed my connection to the only other person in the world who mattered. My daughter, Jenna. She lived in Seattle, and we used to talk every Sunday. It was our tradition. But Sunday came and went, and Ryan told me she was busy. "She is working on a big project, Dad," he said, not looking up from his tablet. "She said she will call when she has time." But I knew Jenna. She would never be too busy for her father. especially after her mother died. I tried to use the landline in the kitchen one afternoon when Megan was out getting her nails done. I picked up the receiver and dialed Jenna's number. My fingers knew it by heart. It rang once, then twice. Then I heard a click, but it was not Jenna. It was a recording. This number has been blocked or is no longer in service. My heart sank. I tried again. Same result. Ryan had put parental controls on the house phone. He had blocked outgoing calls to my own daughter. That evening I confronted him. I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hands were shaking. Ryan, I cannot reach your sister. Is she okay? Ryan sighed and put down his fork. He looked at me with that practiced look of pity. Dad, we did not want to upset you. Jenna called me yesterday. She said she needs some space. She said talking to you is too painful right now because you remind her of Mom. She asked us not to let you call her until she is ready. It was a lie. I felt it in my bones. Jenna was strong. She was the one who held my hand at the funeral. She would never say that. But what could I do? I had no way to prove him wrong. Later that night, I stood in the hallway outside Ryan's office. The door was cracked open. I heard him laughing on the phone. Yeah, she bought it completely, Ryan said. I told her Dad is slipping. I told her he has early onset dementia and gets aggressive on the phone. I told her the doctors recommended no contact for a while to keep him calm. Yeah, she was crying, but she agreed. It is for the best. I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. He was not just stealing my money. He was stealing my reputation. He was painting me as a senile, aggressive old man to my own daughter, so she would not come looking for me. It was evil. Pure, cold evil. While I was being erased from existence, my money was very much alive. It was arriving at the front door in cardboard boxes almost every single day. The doorbell would ring, and the doorman would bring up stack after stack of packages. I saw the logos. The orange boxes from Hermes, the green boxes from Rolex, the black bags from Saks Fifth Avenue. Megan would tear them open on the kitchen island right in front of me. She would squeal with delight as she pulled out a $4,000 handbag or a pair of shoes that cost more than my first car. Look at this, Paul, she would say, holding up a silk scarf. Isn't it gorgeous? It is real silk. I would just nod and go back to sweeping the floor. I knew who paid for that silk. I knew that every time she swiped that card, she was eating away at the legacy I had built for 40 years. The most humiliating moment came on a Tuesday. I looked in the mirror and saw that my hair was getting long and unkempt. I had always taken pride in my appearance. I was a chief engineer. I wore suits. I kept my hair trimmed. Now I looked like a vagrant. I waited until Ryan was in the kitchen drinking his espresso. Ryan, I said, I need a haircut. There is a barber shop down the street. It is only $20. Ryan looked at me over the rim of his cup. He frowned. $20, Dad. That is a lot for a haircut. Can't Megan just trim it for you? She has scissors. I felt a lump in my throat. I had $18 million in his trust fund, and he was debating giving me $20. Please, Ryan, I said. I want to go to a real barber. I want to feel human. He sighed heavily, as if I had asked for the moon. He pulled out his money clip. It was thick with cash. My cash. He peeled off a $20 bill and tossed it on the granite counter. It slid across the surface and stopped near the sink. Fine, he said. But bring me the receipt. And do not talk to anyone. You know how you get confused. I took the money. I did not say thank you. I walked to the barber shop, and for 30 minutes I sat in a chair and let another man take care of me. It was the only time in months I felt like a person. When I walked back into the penthouse, something had changed inside me. The sadness was gone. The grief for my wife was still there, but the grief for my relationship with my son had evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard rage. It was the kind of rage that does not scream. It is the kind of rage that plans. I realized that if they thought I was a confused old man, I would give them exactly what they wanted. I would play the role of a lifetime. I started small. I would intentionally forget where the bathroom was. I would call Megan by my wife's name. "Sarah, is that you?" I would ask, blinking my eyes. Megan would roll her eyes and whisper to Ryan, "He is getting worse. He thinks I am his dead wife. It is creepy." I would spill water on the table and stare at it blankly, as if I did not know how it happened. I would leave the TV on static and sit in front of it for hours, just staring at the gray noise. Ryan watched me. At first he was suspicious. He would wave his hand in front of my face. "Dad, are you in there?" he would ask. I would just smile, a vacuous, empty smile, and talk about the weather in Boston from 20 years ago. It worked. They stopped whispering when I entered the room. They stopped hiding their conversations. To them, I was no longer Paul Harrison, the engineer. I was just a piece of furniture, a broken appliance that they could ignore. They became careless. They left documents on the table. They left their laptops open. They talked about their plans loud and clear while I sat 5 feet away pretending to struggle with a zipper. They thought they were watching a man fade away. They did not know they were being watched by a hawk. Every time they laughed at my clumsiness, I was memorizing a password. Every time they mocked my memory, I was filing away a date or a name. I was not losing my mind. I was sharpening it, and I was waiting for them to make a mistake. I knew it would come. Arrogance always leads to mistakes, and when it happened, I would be ready to strike. The sleepless nights were no longer filled with tears. They were filled with strategy. The old engineer was back to work, and his project was revenge. The digital clock on my bedside table read 2:14 in the morning. The red numbers stared at me in the darkness of my windowless room. The air was stale and recycled, and my throat felt like sandpaper. I had been lying awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the fragmented pieces of my life. I needed water. I sat up slowly. The bed springs creaked, and I froze, waiting to see if anyone heard. Silence. The penthouse was quiet. The only sound was the low hum of the city filtering in from the ventilation system. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, and my feet touched the cold linoleum floor. I did not turn on the light. I knew the path to the kitchen by heart now. I knew exactly how many steps it took to get to the refrigerator without bumping into the island. I opened my door inch by inch. The hallway was dark, but there was a sliver of yellow light spilling out from under the door of Ryan's home office at the far end of the corridor. It was strange. Ryan usually went to bed early before his morning workouts. Megan needed her beauty sleep. Why were they up at this hour? I crept toward the kitchen. As I reached for a glass, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was laughter. Not the loud, boisterous laughter they performed for their guests, but a low, conspiratorial snicker. It was the sound of 2 people sharing a dirty secret. I should have just taken my water and gone back to bed. I should have stayed in my lane. But something pulled me toward that sliver of light. It was a magnetic force. It was the gut feeling that had been nagging me for weeks, finally screaming at me to listen. I moved silently across the marble floor. My socks made no sound. I pressed my back against the wall right next to the office door. The door was not latched. It was open just a crack. I held my breath. "So it is done then?" Megan asked. Her voice was sharp and excited. "It is done," Ryan replied. I heard the click of a mouse and the tapping of keys. The last transfer cleared 10 minutes ago. $500,000. That cleans out the domestic portfolio completely. The Harrison family trust is officially empty. I felt my knees buckle. Empty. $18 million. Gone. Where is it? Megan asked. Safe and sound, Ryan said. The account in the Cayman Islands received it. The shell company is untraceable. By the time anyone realizes the money is moved, we will be long gone. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop a gasp from escaping. They were stealing everything, not just skimming off the top. They were liquidating my entire existence. What about the bank? Megan asked. Will they flag it? Ryan laughed. A dry, arrogant sound. Who is going to flag it? I am the trustee. I have full power of attorney, and the beneficiary is a senile old man who cannot even remember to zip his fly. The bank thinks I am moving the assets to a more secure, long-term strategy. They thanked me for my business. I closed my eyes. The image of Ryan patting my back at the funeral flashed in my mind. Let me carry the load, Dad. Megan's voice brought me back to the cold hallway. Okay, so the money is safe. Now we just have to get through this week. When do we fly? Saturday morning, Ryan said. First class on Emirates. One-way tickets to Dubai. I have already looked at villas on the Palm Jumeirah. You are going to love it, babe. No extradition treaties. No winter. And best of all, no baggage. Baggage. And speaking of baggage, Megan said, her tone dropping lower. What about your father? We cannot just leave him here in the penthouse. The landlord will find him when the lease expires next month. There was a pause. I heard the sound of ice clinking in a glass. Ryan was drinking. Do not worry about him, Ryan said. I handled it today. I had a long talk with Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans was a friend of Ryan's from college. A man I had met once who had cold, dead eyes. And Megan asked. And for $10,000, Dr. Evans is willing to sign anything, Ryan said. He prepared a full medical file. Diagnosis. Advanced Alzheimer's with violent tendencies. He certified that Paul Harrison is a danger to himself and others. Violent tendencies. I had never hurt a fly in my life. I was the man who carried spiders outside instead of killing them. So what does that mean? Megan asked. It means we bypass the expensive private homes, Ryan explained. With this diagnosis, I have the authority to have him involuntarily committed to a state facility. I found one in the South Side. It is grim, overcrowded, underfunded. They drug the patients to keep them quiet, and they do not ask questions. Megan giggled nervously. Is it safe? Safe enough for him, Ryan said. He won't know the difference. His brain is half mush anyway. We will drop him off Friday night after the party. We tell him we are taking him for a checkup. We sign the papers, hand him over to the orderlies, and by the time he realizes what is happening, we will be halfway over the Atlantic. My heart stopped beating. I am sure of it. For a full 10 seconds, I was dead. They were not just leaving me. They were discarding me. They were going to throw me into a hellhole where I would be drugged and forgotten until I died alone in a urine-soaked bed. This was my son. The boy I taught to play baseball. The boy I sat up with when he had fevers. The boy I sacrificed my own dreams for. He was planning to bury me alive. You are a genius, Megan said. I cannot wait to be free of him. The way he shuffles around here. It is depressing. He smells like old people. Ryan chuckled. Just 2 more days, babe. Friday is my birthday. We have the big dinner at Oriole. We have to play the part one last time. I invited all the investors. We need to look like the perfect, successful family. We treat the old man to a nice dinner, we let him sit there and drool, and then boom. Curtain closes. I had heard enough. I pushed myself away from the wall. Every cell in my body was vibrating. It was not fear anymore. Fear is for people who have something to lose. I had nothing left to lose. They had taken my money. They had taken my home. They had taken my freedom. And now they wanted to take my life. I walked back to my room. I did not tiptoe this time. I walked with purpose. If they heard me, I did not care. But they were too busy celebrating their victory to notice the ghost in the hallway. I entered my tiny windowless room and closed the door. I did not turn on the light. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. They were trembling violently. I clenched them into fists until my knuckles turned white. I sat there in the dark, and I let the tears come. But they were not tears of sorrow. They were hot, burning tears of fury. I mourned Sarah 3 months ago. Tonight I mourned Ryan. The son I loved died in that office tonight. The man who walked out of there was a stranger, a monster, a thief. And you do not show mercy to monsters. I looked at the burner phone hidden under my mattress. The phone Jenna had sent me. The lifeline I had been too afraid to use fully. No more fear. Ryan thought I was senile. He thought I was weak. He thought I was a prop in his movie. He was about to find out that the old engineer still knew how to build a trap. He wanted a show for his birthday. He wanted a grand finale. I wiped my eyes. I took a deep breath. The trembling stopped. "Very well, Ryan," I whispered to the darkness. "You will get your show." I lay back down on the pillow, but I did not close my eyes. I stared at the ceiling and began to construct the plan. Every detail, every angle. I would not just stop them. I would destroy them. I would make sure that when they walked out of that restaurant on Friday night, they would not be flying first class to Dubai. They would be riding in the back of a police car. The father in me wanted to scream, but the man in me, the survivor, stayed silent. I waited for the sun to rise. I had work to do. The next morning I woke up with a clarity I had not felt in months. The fog of grief was gone, replaced by the sharp, cold steel of resolve. I had a plan. It was risky, and it required me to be an actor worthy of an Academy Award. But I had no other choice. I needed a phone. I needed to reach Jenna, and I needed to do it today. I waited until Ryan left for his morning meeting at the gym. That left me alone with Megan. She was in the living room, scrolling through her phone and drinking a green smoothie. Perfect. I went into the bathroom. I turned on the shower. I let the water run until the room was filled with steam. Then I took a deep breath. I looked at myself in the mirror. "Showtime, Paul," I whispered. I grabbed the towel rack and rattled it. Then I slammed my hand against the tiled wall as hard as I could. I let out a scream, a loud guttural cry of pain that echoed through the penthouse. Help me, help." I threw myself onto the floor. I curled into a ball, clutching my right hip. I heard Megan's footsteps running down the hallway. "Paul, what is it?" she shouted, banging on the door. I fell. I groaned, my voice strained with fake agony. "I think I broke something. My hip. Oh God, it hurts." Megan opened the door. The steam billowed out. She saw me lying on the wet tiles, my face twisted in pain. For a second, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. Not because she cared about me, but because she was terrified of the liability. If I died or got seriously injured under her watch, it could complicate their travel plans. "Oh my God," she said, covering her mouth. Okay, stay there. Do not move. I am calling an ambulance." "No," I gasped. "No ambulance. Too expensive. Just take me to the urgent care down the street. Please, Megan, just help me up." She hesitated. She looked at her manicure, then at me. Finally, she sighed. "Fine. But if you bleed on my car seats, Ryan will kill you." She helped me up. I leaned heavily on her, putting all my weight on my injured side. I whimpered with every step. I was selling it perfectly. We drove to the urgent care center in silence. Megan was texting furiously, probably updating Ryan. When we got there, she dumped me in a wheelchair and pushed me to the front desk. He fell in the shower, she told the receptionist. He thinks he broke his hip. I need to go move the car. I will be right back. This was my moment. Megan walked out the automatic doors. I was alone in the waiting area. I looked around. There was a nurse standing near the triage station. She looked kind. She had tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda. I wheeled myself over to her. I made my hands shake. I made my lip tremble. "Excuse me, ma'am," I whispered. She looked down at me. "Yes, sweetie, what do you need? Are you in pain?" I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "Yes, but that is not it. I need a favor. A huge favor." She leaned in closer. "What is it?" "My son. He took my phone," I said, my voice cracking. "He says I am too old to have one. But today is my granddaughter's birthday. I just want to hear her voice. Please. Can I borrow your phone for 1 minute? Just 1 minute." Brenda looked at me. She saw a frail old man with bruises on his soul. She saw the desperation in my eyes. She didn't see the engineer planning a counterstrike. She just saw a grandfather who missed his family. She looked around to make sure her supervisor wasn't watching. Then she reached into her pocket. "Make it quick," she whispered, handing me her cell phone. I took it with shaking hands. I dialed Jenna's number. I prayed she would pick up. Ring, ring, hello? "Jenna, Dad." "Oh my God, Dad, is that you? Why are you calling from a strange number? Ryan told me." "Listen to me, Jenna." I cut her off. My voice was low and urgent. "Do not speak. Just listen. Ryan is lying to you. I am not sick. I do not have dementia. He and Megan have stolen everything. The money, the house, everything." "What? Dad, what are you talking about?" "They are planning to put me in a state asylum on Friday, Jenna. They are leaving for Dubai with all the money. I am trapped here." I heard her gasp on the other end of the line. I heard the horror in her silence. "Dad, tell me what to do," she said. Her voice was steady now. She was my daughter, all right. "I need a phone," I said. "I need a secure line. Send me a package. Overnight shipping. Put a burner phone inside a box of Mom's old clothes. Ryan won't check that. He doesn't care about Mom's things. Can you do that?" "Yes," she said. "I will do it right now." "Dad, hold on. I am coming to get you." "No," I said sharply. "Do not come yet. If you come now, they will run. We need to catch them. Just send the phone. I have a plan." I saw Megan walking back through the glass doors. "I have to go," I whispered. "I love you, Bean. I love you too, Dad." I deleted the call log. I handed the phone back to Brenda just as Megan walked up. "Thank you," I said to the nurse loudly. "For the water. You are welcome, sweetie," she said, winking at me. The doctor examined me. No broken bones, just a bad bruise. Megan was annoyed that she had wasted her morning, but I didn't care. As we drove back to the penthouse, I looked out the window and smiled. The cavalry was coming. 2 days later, a package arrived. Megan brought it in, wrinkling her nose. "Oh, this box smells like mothballs," she said. "It is from Jenna. She says it is some of your wife's old sweaters. Do you want this junk?" "Yes," I said, keeping my face blank. It would be nice to have something of hers. She tossed the box on the floor near my room. "Just keep it out of sight," she said. I waited until I was alone in my room. I tore open the tape. Inside, beneath the layers of familiar wool cardigans that still smelled like Sarah's lavender perfume, I found it. A small black burner phone, fully charged. I turned it on. There was one contact saved. Jenna, and a text message. "We are with you, Dad. Tell us when to strike." I held the phone to my chest. I felt a surge of power. For the first time in 3 months, I was not a prisoner. I was a commander. And the war was just beginning. I hid under the blanket with the burner phone pressed tight against my ear. It was 2 in the morning, and the only light came from the glow of the tiny screen. I was talking to Mrs. Nolan. She was a lawyer based in Seattle, a woman my daughter trusted with her life. Her voice was raspy and direct, the kind of voice that did not suffer fools. "I believe you, Paul," she said. "Jenna has told me everything. But in the eyes of the law, belief is not enough. We need evidence. Hard physical evidence. If we go to the police now, with just a story, Ryan will claim you are confused. He has the power of attorney. He has the medical records. He controls the narrative." I gripped the phone tighter. "So what do I do? You said there is a safe in his office," she said. "You said he keeps the files there. I need you to get inside. I need pictures of the forged documents. I need proof of the offshore accounts. And most importantly, I need that fake medical evaluation. Without that, we cannot stop the involuntary commitment order." "I understand," I whispered. "Be careful, Paul," she added. "If he catches you, it is over." I hung up and hid the phone back inside the hollowed-out space in the mattress. I lay there in the dark, plotting. I knew I only had one chance, one window of opportunity before the birthday dinner on Friday. That opportunity came the very next evening. It was Thursday. Ryan and Megan were attending a charity gala at the Art Institute. It was a black tie event. I watched from the kitchen as they got ready. Ryan looked dashing in a tuxedo, adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror. Megan wore a red silk gown that hugged her figure, and she was draping a diamond necklace around her neck. My diamonds. Ryan walked into the kitchen to grab a bottle of water. He looked at me sitting at the small table eating a bowl of oatmeal. "We will be late tonight, Dad," he said, checking his watch. "Do not wait up, and for God's sake, do not touch the thermostat." I looked up at him with my best vacant expression. "Have fun at school," I said, my voice trembling slightly. He rolled his eyes. "I am going to a gala, Dad. Jesus, he is losing it fast." He turned to Megan. "Let's go." I waited. I heard the front door close. I heard the heavy click of the deadlock. I waited another 10 minutes just to be sure they hadn't forgotten anything. I went to the window and watched their black limousine pull away from the curb and disappear into the Chicago traffic. The moment they were gone, the old man vanished. I stood up straight. I walked to the utility drawer in the kitchen. I rummaged through the junk until I found what I was looking for: a small precision screwdriver from an eyeglass repair kit and a stiff paperclip. I walked down the hallway to Ryan's office. The door was locked. Of course it was. He was arrogant, but he was not stupid. I knelt down in front of the handle. I was a chief engineer for 40 years. I built bridges that spanned rivers. I designed mechanisms that could withstand hurricanes. A standard residential door lock was not a challenge. It was an insult. I straightened the paperclip. I inserted the tension wrench I had improvised from the screwdriver. I closed my eyes and visualized the pins inside the cylinder. 1, 2, 3. I applied a tiny amount of torque. I felt the first pin set, then the second. I worked with the patience of a surgeon. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Click. The handle turned. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me. The room smelled of leather and expensive scotch. I didn't turn on the big light. I used the flashlight from the burner phone. I swept the beam across the room until it landed on the wall, safe behind the painting of a ship. I moved the painting. The digital keypad glowed a soft blue in the darkness. This was the hard part. There were a million combinations. I could not pick a digital lock. I had to hack the human element. I stared at the numbers. What would a man like Ryan choose? He was narcissistic. I tried his birthday. Nothing. I tried the day he graduated from Harvard. Nothing. I tried Megan's birthday. The light flashed red. I paused. I thought about how his mind worked. He did not love anyone, but he was sentimental about his own victimhood. He always claimed he was the one who suffered when his mother died. He used her death to manipulate me. Slowly, I reached out. I typed in 6 digits. 0, 6, 1, 2, 5, 4. June 12, 1954. Sarah's birthday. The mechanism whirred. The green light flashed. The heavy steel door popped open. I felt a wave of nausea. He used his dead mother's birthday to lock away the money he stole from her husband. It was a level of depravity I could not comprehend. I wanted to scream, but I swallowed the bile and reached inside. It was a treasure trove of betrayal. I pulled out a thick stack of documents. My hands shook as I laid them on the desk. First, I found the power of attorney. I shone the light on the signature page. There it was. Paul Harrison. But the ink was too smooth. The loops were wrong. It was a clumsy forgery, but good enough to fool a bank clerk who didn't look too closely. I took a photo. Next, I found the bank records, statements from a bank in the Cayman Islands. The balance was $12 million. The account holder was a shell company called RH Holdings. I turned the page. There were transfer receipts showing money leaving my accounts and entering his. I took photos of every page capturing the account numbers and the routing codes. Then I found the travel itinerary. 2 tickets on Emirates Airlines. First class, Chicago to Dubai. One way, departing Saturday morning at 10 a.m. The price of the tickets was $20,000. He was flying to paradise using my retirement while leaving me in hell. I photographed it. And then at the bottom of the stack, I found the smoking gun, the medical file. I opened the manila folder. It was stamped with the letterhead of Dr. Evans. I read the assessment. Patient exhibits severe cognitive decline, aggressive behavior, paranoia, unfit to live independently. Recommendation: immediate involuntary commitment to State Facility Number 4 for the safety of the public. I read the date. It was dated 3 days from now. He had predated the diagnosis to match his timeline. It was a fabrication, a lie designed to strip me of my human rights. I took a picture of the diagnosis. I took a picture of the doctor's signature. I took a picture of the admission forms that Ryan had already signed on my behalf. I had everything. I quickly sent the photos to Mrs. Nolan, one by one. The progress bar on the screen seemed to take forever. Send, send, send. Finally, my phone buzzed. A text message from Nolan. Received. This is a slam dunk, Paul. We have them. Get out of there. I put the papers back exactly as I found them. I made sure the corners were aligned. I closed the safe. I hung the painting back on the wall. I checked the carpet to make sure I left no footprints. I stepped out of the office and locked the door behind me using the paperclip to re-engage the pins. I put the tools back in the kitchen drawer. I went back to my room and sat on the bed. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a hammer. I had done it. I had the evidence. But as the adrenaline faded, a profound sadness washed over me. I sat there in the dark thinking about the dates on those papers, the planning, the calculation. My son had spent more time planning my destruction than he had ever spent getting to know me. I looked at the burner phone one last time before hiding it. The trap is set, I whispered. Now all I had to do was wait for the party. Ryan wanted a celebration. He wanted to be the center of attention. I lay down and pulled the thin blanket up to my chin. I closed my eyes and visualized the restaurant. I visualized the moment the waiter would bring the check. Sleep well, Ryan, I thought. Enjoy your gala. Enjoy your champagne, because the bill is coming due. And it is going to cost you everything. While Ryan was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of his new life in Dubai, Mrs. Nolan was waging war on my behalf. Friday morning broke gray and rainy in Chicago, but in Seattle the sun was rising on a day of reckoning. Mrs. Nolan walked into the district court as soon as the doors opened. She carried a briefcase filled with the digital evidence I had risked my freedom to obtain. The pictures of the Cayman accounts, the forged power of attorney, and the piece of paper that sealed their fate, the fraudulent medical application to have me committed. She told me later what happened in those closed chambers. She said the judge was a man in his 60s, a grandfather himself. When he looked at the financial theft, he was angry. But when he saw the medical fabrication, when he saw that a son was planning to lock his sane, grieving father into a state asylum just to clear the path for a vacation, he was furious. He did not just sign the order. He slammed his pen down. He granted an emergency ex parte freezing injunction. It was a nuclear option. It meant that every asset, every bank account, and every credit line linked to the Harrison Family Trust, or Ryan Harrison personally, would be locked down instantly. But Mrs. Nolan was strategic. She knew that if we froze the accounts at 10 in the morning, Ryan might notice it before the party. He might get a notification on his phone while he was getting his birthday massage. He might cancel the dinner. He might run. We needed to catch him in the open. We needed him to be vulnerable. So she asked the judge for a specific execution time. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Standard Time. That was the time the banks would flip the switch. That was exactly 30 minutes before our reservation at Oriole. I spent that Friday in a state of calm detachment. I watched Ryan and Megan get ready. They were manic with excitement. Ryan was singing in the shower. Megan was packing the last of their designer suitcases, which they had hidden in the guest closet. They thought they were hours away from freedom. They treated me with a new kind of cruelty that day. It was the cruelty of indifference. They didn't even bother to yell at me. They just looked through me as if I were already a ghost. "Hurry up, Dad," Ryan said, as he adjusted his tie in the hallway. "Do not make us late. This is a big night." I put on my old charcoal suit. I looked at myself in the mirror. I did not see a victim. I saw a man who was about to teach a very painful lesson. I adjusted my collar. "I am ready, Ryan," I said. We drove to the restaurant. The car ride was filled with their chatter about Dubai. They ignored me completely, sitting in the back seat. At exactly 5 o'clock, I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was the burner phone. I didn't check it. I knew what it meant. The trap had snapped shut. The assets were frozen. The cards were dead. The money they thought was theirs now belonged to the court. And that brings us back to this moment. The memory of the last 3 days faded from my mind, and the sounds of the restaurant rushed back into my ears. The clinking glasses, the low murmur of conversation, and the heavy, suffocating silence at table number 4. I was no longer in the past. I was standing at the bar holding my glass of water, watching the disaster unfold in real time. The waiter was still standing there holding the declined Visa card. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Sir, do you have another form of payment?" he asked softly. Ryan was staring at the card reader as if it were an alien device. His face was a mask of confusion that was rapidly crumbling into panic. He was sweating now. I could see the beads of perspiration forming on his upper lip. "This does not make sense," Ryan stammered. His voice was high and tight. "I just used this card yesterday. There is a limit of $50,000. Try it again. You must be doing it wrong." "I tried it 3 times, sir," the waiter said. "It is a hard decline. The bank says to confiscate the card." "Confiscate it," Ryan shouted. He snatched the card back from the waiter's hand. "You will do no such thing." Megan grabbed his arm. Her fingernails dug into his suit jacket. "Ryan," she hissed. "People are staring. Fix this. Use the Cayman card." Ryan froze. He looked at her with wide eyes. He couldn't use the Cayman card. Not here. Not in front of witnesses. That account was supposed to be a secret. That was their getaway money. "I cannot use that one," he whispered harshly. "Then use mine," Megan said. She ripped her clutch open and pulled out her platinum card. "Here, run this one. And add a 20% tip, just get us out of here." The waiter took Megan's card. He walked back to the machine. I watched his fingers tap the keys. I took a sip of water. It was the best water I had ever tasted. The machine beeped, a long, low tone that signaled failure. The waiter returned. He did not look apologetic anymore. He looked suspicious. "Declined, ma'am," he said. Megan dropped her fork. It clattered against the china plate. "What do you mean, declined?" she screeched. "That is my personal account. It has nothing to do with him. It appears all accounts linked to the Harrison name have been flagged," the waiter said. The business partners at the table were now fully standing. They were buttoning their jackets. They were checking their phones. The spell was broken. They saw Ryan not as the golden boy of finance, but as a fraud who couldn't pay for dinner. "Ryan, we are going to head out," one of the men said. "We can reschedule when things are more stable." "No, wait, sit down," Ryan pleaded. "It is just a bank error. My father messed up the accounts. He has dementia. He must have called the bank and said something crazy. He was still doing it. Even as his world collapsed, he was using me as his shield. He was blaming the man he robbed." He turned toward the bar. He saw me standing there. He saw that I was not looking at the floor. I was looking right at him. And for the first time, he saw the look in my eyes. It was not confusion. It was not fear. It was absolute cold clarity. He charged toward me. He knocked over a chair in his haste. He looked like a madman. "Dad," he yelled, "what did you do? What did you do to the accounts?" The entire restaurant fell silent. Every eye was on us. The successful son in his Italian suit screaming at his elderly father in a worn-out coat. I set my glass down on the bar counter. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I waited until he was right in front of me, until I could smell the fear on him. "I did nothing to your accounts, Ryan," I said calmly. My voice carried through the silent room. "I simply took back control of mine." He stared at me. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "What are you talking about?" he whispered. "You are senile. You do not know what you are doing. Give me the phone. Give me your wallet." I reached into my pocket, but I did not pull out the empty wallet he expected. I pulled out the burner phone. I held it up. "I know exactly what I am doing," I said. "I know about the house you sold. I know about the $18 million you moved to the Cayman Islands. I know about the tickets to Dubai. And I know about the room at the state asylum where you planned to dump me tonight." Megan had come up behind him. She heard the last part. Her face went white. She looked like she was going to faint. You know," she stammered. I looked at her. I looked at the diamond necklace she was wearing. "I know everything, Megan," I said. "And so does the judge who signed the freeze order at 5 o'clock today. You are not going to Dubai. You are not going anywhere." Ryan lunged for the phone. "Give me that," he screamed. But before he could touch me, a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. It was the restaurant manager. And behind him stood two men in dark suits who had just walked in through the front door. They were not smiling. "Mr. Harrison," the manager said, "I think you need to step back." Ryan spun around. "Do not touch me. This old man is crazy. He is lying." The two men in suits stepped forward. One of them pulled out a badge. Ryan Harrison, the officer said. Megan Harrison, you are both under arrest. The trap was perfect. The audience was watching, and the curtain was finally coming down. The silence in the restaurant was not empty. It was heavy. It was a physical weight that pressed down on every single person in the room. The clatter of silverware had stopped. The music seemed to have faded into the background. All that remained was the heavy breathing of my son standing before me. His chest was heaving beneath his expensive navy suit. His face was a map of panic and rage. The veins in his neck were bulging like cords of rope. He looked at me, and for the first time in his life, he did not see his father. He saw an obstacle. He saw a glitch in his perfect matrix. He screamed at me again. His voice cracked with the strain of it. It was a sound I had never heard from him before. It was the sound of a spoiled child realizing the toy store was closed. What the hell are you doing, Dad? Give me the cards. Give me the wallet. Stop this madness right now before I have you committed tonight. He reached for me. His hand was a claw. He intended to grab my lapel to shake the obedience back into me. He expected me to flinch. He expected the old man to cower and apologize and hand over the plastic that fueled his delusions of grandeur. But I did not flinch. I stood up. I did not stand up like a 70-year-old man with a bad hip. I did not stand up like a confused geriatric patient. I stood up with the smooth, controlled power of a man who had spent 40 years building skyscrapers and bridges. I straightened my spine. I seemed to grow 3 inches in height. The slouch was gone. The tremors were gone. The vacant look in my eyes vanished, replaced by a gaze that was sharp and cold as steel. I brushed his hand away. I did not hit him. I simply swatted his hand aside as if it were a fly. The gesture was dismissive. It was the action of a parent correcting a petulant child. Ryan stumbled back. He looked shocked. He had forgotten that before I was his victim, I was his father. He had forgotten that I was the one who taught him how to walk. I looked him dead in the eye. I pitched my voice so that it would carry to every corner of the room. I did not shout. Shouting is for the weak. I spoke with the absolute authority of the truth. That is not your card, Ryan. The words hung in the air. That is my card. It is linked to my life savings. The money I worked 40 years to earn. The money you and your wife have been draining like parasites for the last 3 months. Ryan turned pale. He looked around at his guests. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a choke. Don't listen to him, he stammered, addressing the investors. He is having an episode. He thinks he is still working. He is confused. Dad, sit down. You are embarrassing yourself. I did not sit down. I stepped out from behind the small service table. I walked into the center of the room. I was now standing in the light of the chandelier. I turned to the table where his business partners sat. These were men who respected money, men who respected power. Gentlemen, I said. My voice was steady and deep. My son told you I have dementia. He told you I am a burden. He told you he is a self-made man investing his own capital. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the burner phone. I held it up like a piece of evidence in a courtroom. The truth is, my son is a fraud. He has not earned a dime in 10 years. The capital he is boasting about is my retirement fund. The house he lives in is paid for by the sale of my home in Boston. And the lifestyle he and his wife enjoy is funded by stealing from a grieving widower. Liar, Megan screamed. She jumped up from her chair. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. The beautiful socialite was gone. In her place was a cornered animal. Shut up, old man, she shrieked. You are lying. You are sick in the head. Ryan, call the doctors. Call Dr. Evans. Get him out of here. I turned my gaze to her. It was a look of such disappointment that she actually flinched. Dr. Evans is not coming, Megan, I said, because I sent his fraudulent medical report to the state medical board this afternoon, and I sent a copy to the district attorney. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. She gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. Ryan looked at her, then back at me. He was shaking his head. No. No. You are bluffing. You do not know how to do that. You do not even know how to use a smartphone. I smiled. It was a cold, humorless smile. I am a chief engineer, Ryan. I was writing code when you were still in diapers. Did you really think that because I grieved for your mother, I had lost my mind? Did you think I was stupid? I took a step closer to him. He shrank back. I know about the account in the Cayman Islands, Ryan. Account number 74229. I know about the $500,000 you transferred last night. I know about the one-way tickets to Dubai on Emirates Flight 202 departing tomorrow morning. Ryan's knees gave out. He grabbed the back of a chair to support himself. The guests gasped. The specific details hit them like bullets. They knew this was not the rambling of a senile man. This was the recitation of a criminal indictment. But I was not done. I had one more blow to deliver. The hardest one. And I know your plan for tonight, Ryan. I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to feel it. You were not going to take me home after this dinner. You were going to drive me to the South Side. You were going to use a fake diagnosis to have me involuntarily committed to a state asylum. You were going to lock your own father in a cage so you could fly to the beach and drink champagne with my money. A murmur of horror rippled through the room. The investors looked at Ryan with pure disgust. One of them, the man who had been drinking the expensive wine, stood up. He threw his napkin on the table. Is this true, Harrison? The man asked, his voice dripping with contempt. Were you going to lock up your father? Ryan tried to speak. It is complicated. He needs help. It was for his own good. It was for your greed, I interrupted. It was because you are too weak to work and too cruel to love. You are not a businessman, Ryan. You are a thief, and you are a disappointment to the name Harrison. That broke him. The humiliation was total. He looked around the room and saw no allies. He saw only judgment. He saw the end of his social life, the end of his career, the end of his freedom. Megan let out a guttural scream. She lost all control. She grabbed a steak knife from the table. It was a silver knife, heavy and sharp. You ruined everything, she screamed. You miserable old leech! I will kill you! She lunged at me. She moved fast, fueled by the adrenaline of a narcissist who had lost her supply. She raised the knife. I did not move. I did not have to. Before she could take 2 steps, a large hand grabbed her wrist. It was the restaurant manager. He had been waiting for this moment. He twisted her arm behind her back with practiced ease. The knife clattered to the floor with a metallic ring that sounded like a bell tolling for a funeral. Let me go, she shrieked, kicking and thrashing. He is the criminal. He stole our lives. That is enough, madam, the manager said, his voice calm and firm. At that moment, the front doors of the restaurant swung open wide. The cold Chicago wind blew in, followed by 2 officers from the Chicago Police Department and 2 agents in federal jackets. They marched into the room with grim determination. Ryan saw them. He slumped into the chair. He put his head in his hands. He knew it was over. He began to weep. Not the tears of a man who is sorry for what he did, but the tears of a man who is sorry he got caught. I watched them approach. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The heavy burden of the last 3 months, the fear, the acting, the swallowing of my pride, it all evaporated. I looked at the waiter who was still holding the bill. He was staring at me with wide, admiring eyes. I reached into my inner pocket. I pulled out my new debit card. The one Mrs. Nolan had helped me set up just hours ago. The one that was linked to the only account Ryan could not touch. "I will take care of the bill," I said to the waiter. "But sir," the waiter stammered, "after all this, you still want to pay." I looked at Ryan weeping in his chair. I looked at Megan being handcuffed by the officers screaming obscenities. "Yes," I said quietly. "Consider it a severance package. It is the last thing I will ever give them." I handed him the card. Then I turned to the table of investors who were watching me with stunned silence. "I apologize for the disruption, gentlemen," I said, adjusting my cuffs. "It seems the party is over." I walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights. I did not look back as the police read them their rights. I did not look back as they were marched out in handcuffs past the diners they had tried so hard to impress. I just looked at the reflection of an old man in the glass. He looked tired, but he was standing tall, and for the first time in a long time he was free. The officers moved with a heavy professional efficiency that sucked the remaining air out of the room. There were 4 of them in total. 2 uniformed officers from the Chicago Police Department and 2 men in suits who identified themselves as federal agents. They did not shout. They did not cause a scene. They simply took control of the space with a terrifying calmness. The restaurant manager released Megan's arm and stepped back, wiping his hands on his trousers as if he had touched something unclean. One of the officers immediately took her wrist and pulled it behind her back. I heard the sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut. Click, click, click. It was a sharp mechanical sound that echoed off the high ceilings. It was the sound of consequences arriving at last. Megan let out a sob. It was a high-pitched sound of pure disbelief. She looked at the officer, and then she looked at her husband. "Ryan, do something," she whimpered. "Tell them who we are." But Ryan could not do anything. He was slumped in his chair, his face buried in his hands. The federal agent walked over to him and tapped him on the shoulder. "Ryan Harrison," the agent said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Please stand up. You are under arrest." Ryan looked up. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked around the room, searching for an exit, searching for a friendly face, searching for a way out of the nightmare he had created. But there was no exit. The business partners he had been trying to impress were now standing against the wall, their arms crossed, their faces hard with judgment. They wanted nothing to do with him. Ryan stood up slowly. His legs were shaking so badly, I thought he might fall. He held out his hands almost instinctively. The agent spun him around and cuffed him. The metal cuffs bit into his wrists, crushing the cuffs of his expensive tailored shirt. The Patek Philippe watch he had bought with my money gleamed just inches away from the steel restraints. It was a poetic image, the symbol of his stolen wealth locked against the symbol of his punishment. "You have the right to remain silent." The agent began reciting the Miranda rights. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Ryan was not listening to his rights. He was staring at me. He was staring at his father. The agent continued listing the charges. They were heavy charges, ugly charges. "You are being charged with wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, forgery of legal documents, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse." The last charge caused a ripple of murmurs through the restaurant. Elder abuse. It was a dirty crime. It was a coward's crime. The investors looked at Ryan with open disgust. To steal money is one thing, but to plot against your own vulnerable father is unforgivable. Ryan seemed to shrink under the weight of the words. He realized the gravity of his situation. He realized that this was not a misunderstanding that could be fixed with a smooth apology or a bribe. He was looking at 20 years in a federal prison. He was looking at the end of his life. Panic overtook him. The arrogance that had defined him for 40 years shattered like glass. He lunged toward me, straining against the agent's grip. "Dad," he screamed. Dad, please. Tell them to stop. I stood perfectly still. I watched him struggle. I watched the snot running down his nose. I watched the tears streaming down his cheeks. He looked pathetic. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and was afraid of a spanking. But he had broken much more than a vase. He had broken a family. Dad, look at me, he pleaded, his voice cracking. It is me. It is Ryan. I am your son. You cannot let them take me. I am your flesh and blood. The agent pulled him back. Easy, Mr. Harrison. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Ryan ignored him. He kept his eyes locked on mine. He was begging now. Dad, I am sorry, okay? I am sorry about the money. We will give it back. Just tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you gave us permission. Please, Dad. You cannot send your own son to prison. It will kill me. I cannot survive in there. He was crying openly now, loud, ugly sobs that racked his body. I am your boy, Dad. Remember, you used to take me to baseball games. You used to carry me on your shoulders. You love me. I know you love me. Please, do not do this. The room waited for my answer. They waited to see if the old man would crack. They waited to see if the bond of blood was stronger than the sin of betrayal. I felt an ache in my chest. It was a sharp, physical pain. He was right. I did remember the baseball games. I did remember carrying him on my shoulders. I remembered the day he was born and how I promised to protect him from the world. But I also remembered the windowless room. I remembered the fake medical report. I remembered the conversation I heard at 2 a.m. when he laughed about locking me away in an asylum so he could go to the beach. I looked at him. I looked deep into his eyes, and I realized that the boy I remembered was gone. He had been consumed by the monster standing in front of me. I took a step closer. I wanted him to hear me clearly. I wanted my words to be the last thing he remembered before the cell door slammed shut. My face was stone. My voice was ice. I looked him up and down, and then I spoke. You are confused, Ryan. Ryan blinked, hope flickering in his eyes. What? What do you mean? I am not your father, I said softly. He stared at me. Dad, what are you saying? My son died 3 months ago, I said. My son died the same day his mother did. The boy I raised would never have stolen his father's home. The boy I raised would never have treated his grieving father like a dog. The boy I raised had a heart. I paused. I let the words sink in. You, I said, pointing at his chest. You are just a thief who happens to have the same last name as me. You are a stranger, and I do not know you. Ryan's face crumbled. The hope vanished, replaced by absolute despair. He realized that the bridge was burned. He realized that there was no mercy coming. Dad. No, he whispered. Do not call me that, I snapped. My voice was sudden and sharp like a whip. You lost the right to use that word when you signed the papers to have me committed. You wanted me out of your life, Ryan. You wanted me gone. Well, congratulations. You got your wish. I turned to the federal agent. Officer, get him out of my sight. The agent nodded. He tightened his grip on Ryan's arm. Let's go, Harrison. Move it. They began to drag him toward the door. Ryan's legs gave out, and they had to hold him up. He was wailing now, a low, mournful sound of regret. Megan was being led out behind him. She was not crying anymore. She was cursing. She was spitting venom at everyone who looked at her. You are all jealous, she screamed. You are all losers. The diners watched in silence as the parade of shame made its way to the exit. The flashing blue lights of the police cruisers were visible through the front windows. They bathed the restaurant in a harsh, rhythmic glow. I watched them go. I watched the door close behind them, shutting out the noise of the sirens and the screams. The silence returned to the restaurant. But it was different now. It was not the silence of tension. It was the silence of a storm that had finally passed. I stood there in the center of the room alone. My heart was breaking, but my head was high. I had done the hardest thing a father can ever do. I had cut off my own limb to save my life. The restaurant manager walked over to me. He looked shaken. "Mr. Harrison," he said gently, Can I get you a chair? Maybe a glass of brandy?" I looked at him. I felt tired, a deep exhaustion that went down to my bones. But I also felt lighter. The fear was gone. The anxiety was gone. "No, thank you," I said. "I think I just want to go home." "But you have no home, sir," the manager said. "I heard what you said. They sold your house." I smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was genuine. "I have a daughter in Seattle," I said, "and I have a plane ticket. I am going to be just fine." I turned and walked toward the door. I walked past the table where I had been sitting alone just an hour ago. I saw the glass of water still sitting there. I left it. I walked out into the cool Chicago night. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean. I watched the police cars drive away, carrying the wreckage of my past. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold air. I was 70 years old. I was homeless. I was alone. But I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to tomorrow. 6 months is a long time to wait for the final scene of a tragedy. The seasons had changed outside the windows of the federal courthouse. The biting winter wind of Chicago had softened into a tentative spring, but inside courtroom 304, the air remained cold and sterile. I sat in the back row on a hard wooden bench. I was not alone. Mrs. Nolan sat beside me, her briefcase resting on her knees like a shield. She had been my rock through the endless depositions and the hearings and the desperate attempts by Ryan's defense team to paint me as a vindictive father. But today, the maneuvering was over. Today was Judgment Day. When the bailiff announced the arrival of the honorable judge, everyone stood up. The silence was absolute. Then the side door opened, and they brought the defendants in. I had not seen Ryan or Megan since that night at the restaurant. I had seen their mugshots on the news, of course. I had seen the sketches from the courtroom artist. But seeing them in the flesh was different. They looked smaller. They looked like rough sketches of the people they used to be. Megan's hair, which she used to spend hundreds of dollars maintaining, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her roots were showing. Ryan looked gaunt. The designer suits were gone, replaced by the shapeless orange jumpsuits of the Federal Detention Center. He walked with a shuffle, his ankles shackled together. The sound of the chains dragging across the floor was a metallic scraping noise that I will never forget. He did not look at the gallery. He kept his eyes fixed on the floor. He knew I was there. I could feel him shrinking away from my presence. He was ashamed. Not of what he did, but of where he had ended up. The sentencing hearing lasted 2 hours, but it felt like 2 minutes. The judge was a stern woman who had clearly seen enough greed in her career to last a lifetime. She read through the evidence with a monotone voice that made the crimes sound even more horrific. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, the falsification of medical records. She paused when she got to the part about the nursing home. She took off her glasses and looked directly at Ryan. "Mr. Harrison," she said, "in my 20 years on the bench, I have seen people steal for drug addictions. I have seen them steal out of desperation. But you stole for vanity. And to achieve that vanity, you were willing to discard your own father like garbage. It is a level of moral bankruptcy that this court finds staggering." Ryan flinched. Megan began to sob quietly into her hands. The judge put her glasses back on. "Ryan Harrison, I sentence you to 120 months in a federal correctional institution. 10 years. Megan let out a gasp. Megan Harrison, for your role as an active co-conspirator, I sentence you to 84 months, 7 years. The gavel came down. It was a sharp, final sound. It was the sound of a book closing. The assets were ordered to be returned. The penthouse had already been seized and sold. The accounts in the Cayman Islands had been repatriated. After the lawyers took their fees and the fines were paid, I would get back most of what they had stolen. I was rich again. But as I watched the marshals lead my son away in chains, I felt remarkably poor. I did not celebrate. There was no joy in sending my own flesh and blood to prison. There was only relief. The kind of relief you feel when a long, painful surgery is finally over. You are still in pain, but you know the healing can begin. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I would walk out of that courthouse and never look back. But there was one loose thread, one question that kept keeping me awake at night. I needed to know if he understood. I needed to know if somewhere beneath the layers of narcissism and greed, the boy I raised still existed. So a week later, I drove to the federal prison in downstate Illinois. The facility was a fortress of gray concrete and razor wire rising out of the flat cornfields. It looked like a tomb for the living. I went through the security checks. I emptied my pockets. I walked through the metal detectors. The air inside smelled of bleach and industrial floor wax. It was the smell of institutionalized misery. I sat in the visitation room on a metal stool bolted to the floor. A thick pane of glass separated me from the empty chair on the other side. I waited. 10 minutes later, the door on the far side opened. A guard led Ryan in. He looked different even after just a week. His head had been shaved. His skin was sallow. He sat down and picked up the black telephone receiver. He looked at me through the glass. His eyes were dark and hollow, but as soon as he saw my face, I saw the spark. It was not a spark of remorse. It was a spark of anger. I picked up my phone. "Hello, Ryan," I said. He did not say hello. He leaned forward, his breath fogging up the glass. "Are you happy now?" he hissed. His voice sounded tinny and distorted through the phone line. I looked at him calmly. "I am not happy, Ryan. No father is happy to see his son in a cage." "Then why did you do it?" he snapped. "Why did you not just take the plea deal? Why did you have to testify? You could have asked for leniency. You could have told them I was young and stupid, but you sat there and you let them bury me." I listened to him, and I felt a strange sensation. For months I had felt anger. I had felt betrayal. I had felt grief. But now, sitting inches away from him, I felt nothing. The emotional cord that connects a parent to a child had finally snapped. I was looking at a stranger who happened to have my eyes and my nose but none of my soul. "I did it because you broke the law, Ryan," I said, "and because you tried to erase me. You didn't just want my money. You wanted my life. You wanted to put me in a hole so you could forget I existed." "It was just a nursing home, Dad," he argued, his voice rising. "It wasn't a prison. You make it sound like I was going to kill you. I just wanted to live my life. I deserved that money. I worked for you. I was your son. I was supposed to inherit it anyway. I just took an advance." He was still doing it. He was still justifying it. He truly believed he was the victim. He believed that my money was his birthright, and that I was selfish for holding on to it. I shook my head slowly. "You deserved nothing, Ryan. Inheritance is a gift, not a debt. And you don't get a reward for breathing. You get a reward for building something. You built nothing. You only destroyed." Ryan slammed his fist against the counter. The guard behind him took a step forward, his hand resting on his baton. Ryan flinched and lowered his voice. "So that is it, huh? You came here to lecture me. You came here to gloat. Well, go ahead. Enjoy your millions, Dad. You are going to die alone. You have no one. Megan hates you. I hate you. You will rot in that big empty house and no one will care. I looked at his face contorted with spite. I realized then that I had come here looking for my son, but my son had died a long time ago. The man sitting in front of me was just a vessel of resentment. I did not come to gloat, I said softly. I came to give you something. I reached into my shirt pocket. I pulled out a small photograph. It was old and the edges were curled. It was a picture taken 35 years ago at a lake house in Wisconsin. In the photo, I was a young man with a thick beard holding a fishing rod. Next to me was Sarah laughing with the wind in her hair, and sitting between us on the dock was a 5-year-old boy. He was holding a small fish, beaming with pride. He looked safe. He looked loved. I pressed the photo against the glass. Ryan looked at it. For a second, the anger faltered. He stared at the image of the little boy he used to be. He stared at his mother's smile. That was the family you had, I said. That was the love you threw away for a first-class ticket and a watch. Ryan looked away. He could not look at the photo. Take it away, he whispered. I am leaving it with the guard, I said. You can put it on your cell wall, or you can tear it up. It does not matter to me anymore. I stood up. My knees didn't ache. My back was straight. Ryan looked up at me, panic rising in his eyes again. Wait. Where are you going? I am going to Seattle, Ryan. I am going to live with your sister. I am going to watch my granddaughter grow up. I am going to start a foundation in your mother's name. I am going to live. But you will come back, right? You will visit. I looked at him one last time. I memorized his face. Not to cherish it, but to let it go. No, Ryan, I said. I won't come back. But 10 years is a long time, he stammered. I know, I said. Use it well. I hung up the phone. Dad, wait. Ryan shouted, his voice muffled by the glass. Dad, do not walk away. Dad. I turned my back on him. I walked toward the heavy steel door. I heard him banging on the glass behind me. I heard him calling me. But I did not stop. I did not turn around. I signaled to the guard to open the door. The buzzer sounded a loud, harsh buzz that signaled the end of the visit. I stepped out into the hallway. The door clanged shut behind me, cutting off the sound of his voice. The silence that followed was beautiful. I walked down the long corridor past the other visitors, past the guards, past the checkpoints. I walked out into the sunshine. I walked to my rental car and sat in the driver's seat. I took a deep breath. I checked my mirror. I put the car in gear. I drove away from the prison. I drove toward the highway. I drove toward the airport. I drove toward my life. I was Paul Harrison. I was 70 years old, and for the first time in a long time, the road ahead was clear. It has been 1 year since I walked out of that prison visitor room and left my son behind. The seasons have turned a full circle. The harsh winter of Chicago is just a memory, now replaced by the gentle, persistent rain of the Pacific Northwest. I did exactly what I promised I would do. I moved to Seattle. I bought a small house not far from where Jenna and her husband live. It is not a penthouse. It does not have marble floors or gold-plated faucets. It is a craftsman cottage with a creaky front porch and a garden that needed a lot of work. And I love every inch of it because it is mine. My name is on the deed. My name is on the utility bills. And when I lock the door at night, I am the one holding the key. Jenna comes over every Sunday. We cook dinner together. We talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes I watch her playing with her daughter. My granddaughter Maya and I feel a lump in my throat. I see the same spark in Maya's eyes that I used to see in Ryan's. But this time I am watching more closely. I am making sure that alongside the love we are teaching her the value of work, the value of $1, and most importantly, the value of respect. The recovery of my assets took some time, but Mrs. Nolan was relentless. She clawed back almost everything Ryan and Megan had stolen. The apartment was sold. The cars were auctioned off. The offshore accounts were drained. When the final check was deposited into my account, I looked at the number. It was millions of dollars. Enough to live in luxury for the rest of my life. Enough to buy a yacht or a mansion. But I did not want a yacht. I did not want a mansion. I had learned the hard way that money without purpose is just a target for predators. So I kept enough to be comfortable. I set aside a secure trust for Maya's education, one that she cannot touch until she is 30 and has a career of her own. And then I took the rest, and I went to see a lawyer. Not to write a will, but to start a war. I established the Sarah Harrison Foundation. We opened our doors 3 months ago. Our mission is simple. We provide high-powered legal defense and financial forensic services to the elderly who are being abused by their families. We help the grandmothers who were tricked into signing over their deeds. We help the grandfathers whose pensions are being siphoned off by drug-addicted children. We help the people who are too ashamed to admit that their own flesh and blood has betrayed them. I go into the office 3 days a week. I sit with these people. I hold their hands. I tell them my story. I see the shame in their eyes, the same shame I felt in that restaurant. And I tell them that it is not their fault. I tell them that love is not a weakness, even if it was weaponized against them. Last week, we helped a retired teacher get her home back from a nephew who had forged her signature. When the judge slammed the gavel down and ruled in her favor, she hugged me in the hallway. She was crying. She said, "Mr. Harrison, you saved my life." I told her, "No, madam. You saved yourself. I just gave you the sword. That is my legacy now. Not bridges, not skyscrapers, but dignity. I am rebuilding the dignity of people who thought their lives were over." But there was one final conversation I needed to have. One final piece of business to close the book on the tragedy of the Harrison family. Last Tuesday, I flew back to Boston. It was a crisp autumn day. The leaves on the trees were burning red and orange just the way Sarah loved them. I rented a car and drove out to the quiet cemetery where we had buried her. It felt like a lifetime ago that I stood there with Ryan by my side, listening to his empty promises. I walked to her grave. The stone was cold and gray. I cleaned off a few fallen leaves. I placed a bouquet of fresh hydrangeas in the vase. I stood there for a long time, just listening to the wind in the trees. I thought about the life we built. I thought about the sacrifices we made. I thought about the long shifts I worked so Ryan could go to private school. I thought about the vacations we skipped so we could fund his trust. I knelt down in the grass. I touched the letters of her name engraved in the granite. "Hello, Sarah," I whispered. "I am back." I took a deep breath. The air smelled of damp earth and pine needles. "I have some news," I said. "Our boy is gone. He is alive, but he is gone. He is in a place where he cannot hurt anyone anymore. And I need you to know that I am okay. I am not lonely. I am not lost." I paused, collecting my thoughts. This was the hardest part. The confession. We made a mistake, Sarah. You and I. We loved him too much. We shielded him from every storm. We gave him everything he wanted before he even knew how to ask for it. We thought we were being good parents. We thought we were giving him a better life than we had. I looked at the date of her death on the stone. We taught him to be kind, Sarah. We taught him manners. We taught him how to tie a tie and how to shake a hand. But we forgot the most important thing. We forgot to teach him gratitude. We forgot to teach him that the things we gave him were gifts, not rights. We raised a prince and we were surprised when he became a tyrant. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of truth. But I fixed it. Sarah, I said, my voice growing stronger. It broke my heart to do it. but I fixed it. He is learning now. He is learning that actions have consequences. He is learning that the world does not owe him a living. It is a hard lesson, and he hates me for it. But it was the only way to save his soul, even if I had to sacrifice his love to do it. I stood up, I wiped my face. I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The guilt I had been carrying, the question of where I went wrong, was gone. I had done my best, and when my best failed, I had done what was necessary. I looked at the headstone one last time. Rest easy, my love. I will see you again one day. But not yet. I have too much work to do. I walked back to the car. I drove to the airport. I flew back to Seattle, back to my garden, back to my daughter, back to my life. And now I am talking to you. The person listening to this story. Maybe you are sitting in your car. Maybe you are in your kitchen. Maybe you are lying in bed, worrying about your own children, worrying about your own future. I want you to listen to me closely. Love your family. Cherish them. Give them your time. Give them your heart. But never ever give them the keys to your existence. Do not sign over your house just because you are afraid of being alone. Do not hand over your bank accounts just because you are tired of balancing the checkbook. Do not let anyone tell you that you are too old or too slow or too confused to manage your own destiny. Your dignity is the most valuable asset you own. It is worth more than any house, more than any bank account. Guard it. Protect it. And if someone tries to take it from you, whether it is a stranger or your own son, you fight back. You stand up. You look them in the eye. And you remind them who you are. My name is Paul Harrison. I am 71 years old. I am a father. I am a survivor. And I am finally free. If this story spoke to you, please share it. You never know who needs to hear it. You never know who is sitting in a windowless room waiting for permission to fight back. Tell them they are not alone. Tell them the door is not locked. They just have to turn the handle. Thank you for listening. From Seattle, with love and respect. This is Paul signing off.